So, the shirt you're wearing right now, yeah, you listening to this, it didn't just start as a piece of fabric.
No, definitely not. It's way more complicated than that.
Right. It actually started as like an architectural blueprint. And then it had to undergo this rigorous physical stress testing and, survive a completely brutal gauntlet of supply chain mathematics.
Yeah, and all of that happens before someone even picks up a needle.
Exactly. So today we have this incredibly detailed source document in front of us. It's titled Behind the Sketchbook, A Day in the Life of a Fashion Designer.
It's a fascinating read.
It really is. And our mission for this deep dive, because we always have a mission, is to completely dismantle the illusion of effortless runway glamour.
We're basically pulling back the curtain.
Yes, we are decoding the hidden, highly technical, and honestly grueling artistry that dictates what you and I wear every single day. Because, okay, let's unpack this. Diving into this material, I had to completely reframe my whole understanding of the industry.
How so? Like, what was your initial thought?
Well, I was pictured fashion design as just, I don't know, drawing stylized flowing dresses on a sketch pad. Like it was purely aesthetic.
Right, the classic movie trope of a designer just sketching by a window.
Exactly. But these sources reveal a process that is essentially high-stakes engineering colliding with ruthless global commerce.
Yeah, and that illusion of effortlessness you mentioned, that is entirely by design.
Wait, really? It's intentional.
Oh, absolutely. When you see a finished garment in a store or on a runway, you are looking at the very end of a massive, complex life cycle. What we're really unpacking today is the journey of a fleeting idea.
A fleeting idea. I like that.
Yeah, we are tracing how an abstract thought, say, a specific emotional reaction to a piece of architecture, or maybe a color palette someone noticed during international travel, how that thought manages to survive the brutal laws of physics.
Just to become a tangible object that sits in your closet.
Precisely. It is a highly methodical, almost scientific process that successfully disguises itself as pure, spontaneous art.
Wow. Okay, so every physical object, whether it's like a massive suspension bridge or literally just the denim jacket you put on this morning, it starts as an abstract thought in someone's head.
Right. And it has to start somewhere.
So let's explore that absolute zero point, the spark of inspiration. The source emphasizes that designers are essentially professional sponges,
They really are. They're just absorbing everything around them.
gathering inspiration from incredibly diverse, sometimes totally unexpected places. We're talking classical art, global street style, scenes from nature.
And even like sweeping macroeconomic fashion trends.
Yeah. But the thing that really stuck with me out of all of that was the architecture.
Oh, the architectural references are huge.
Right. The document details how designers use these inspiration boards and sketchbooks to define cuts, garment structure, right down to the stitching concepts.
Yeah, every little detail.
It made me realize that a designer's sketchbook isn't just, a collection of doodles in the margins. It's an actual structural plan. It's like you can't just draw a pretty building, right? You have to know where the load-bearing walls go so it doesn't just collapse on itself.
That's a perfect analogy, actually. The sketchbook is absolutely the foundational anchor for an entire collection. Designers will spend weeks in these, like, aggressive research modes.
Oh, I bet. Just drowning in references.
Yeah, they are absorbing textures, observing how light hits a building, noting the shifting silhouettes in different global climates, and all of that abstract gathering has to be funneled into a single, cohesive vision on the page.
Okay, but I want to push back on that for a second, on how that translation actually happens.
Okay, go for it.
Let's take that architectural inspiration. It's one thing to look at the sharp, jagged, asymmetrical lines of, like, a brutalist concrete building and find it visually striking.
Right, it's inspiring to look at.
But it's entirely another thing to translate that rigid geometry into a garment that a living human being can actually put their arms through. And, like, wear to the grocery store. How does a designer balance that wild, abstract inspiration with the functional reality of human anatomy?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the sketchbook itself is the translation tool.
Oh, really? It's not just the ideas phase.
No, not at all. It isn't just a canvas for wild ideas. It's the exact space where designers must bridge the gap between boundless creativity and the strict laws of physics.
So it's where the math happens.
Yes. Abstract art has to become applied design here. The source actually uses the brand Apparelizer as a case study for this exact balance.
Oh, yeah, Apparelizer. They came up a few times.
Right, because their entire brand ethos is centered on blending timeless elegance with contemporary style. just to appeal to a modern consumer. And to achieve that, you can't just slap a picture of a skyscraper on a mood board and call it a day.
Right, you have to actively engineer it so a person can actually wear the thing without it falling off.
Precisely. You have to refine those rough sketches repeatedly. The designer pairs those initial hand-drawn concepts with very precise digital design software.
Which is crazy to think about, like CAD for clothing.
Basically, yeah. They are meticulously calculating proportions, angles, and visual weight distribution. That way, the visual reference of that asymmetrical building translates into, say, a lapel or a shoulder seam that will actually function in 3 dimensions.
And the software helps them see if it works.
Exactly. The software allows them to test the geometry before a single piece of fabric is ever cut.
Okay, but a digital blueprint is ultimately useless if the physical building collapses, right?
Fair.
If that sketchbook is the architecture, then the fabric is the concrete and steel. And it seems like a designer's biggest enemy isn't a lack of ideas. It's gravity.
Gravity is definitely the ultimate test.
Because a sketch on a computer screen is completely weightless. But the moment you commit to a physical material to bring that blueprint into the real world, you are suddenly fighting physics.
You are instantly bound by the limitations of the physical world. And the source makes it really clear that even the most brilliant, perfectly proportioned sketch will completely fail if it is executed with the wrong textile.
Because the fabric just won't hold the shave.
Exactly. Fabric choice is dictated by a multitude of intersecting factors. You've got texture, durability, comfort, seasonal suitability.
There's just so much to consider.
Yeah, because every single material has its own inherent behavior, its own tension, and its own breaking point.
And different styles demand entirely different toolkits, too.
Yeah.
The document points out that luxury fashion leans heavily on the behavior of silk, wool, cashmere, and premium cotton.
While streetwear is a whole different ballgame.
Right. Streetwear has a totally different energy and utility, so it relies on denim, jerseys, and these incredibly innovative technical fabrics. But okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. The pattern makers.
Oh, yes. The unsung heroes.
Seriously. We culturally assume the designer just draws a picture and someone sews it together.
Yeah.
But pattern makers are the ones who actually translate a flat 2D drawing into a 3D garment template.
It involves so much math.
Right. They have to calculate darts, bias cuts, tension mapping, just so that a flat, rigid piece of woven cotton can bend seamlessly around a curved human rib cage.
It really is engineering.
And they collaborate with tailors and seamstresses for the cutting, the sewing, creating the prototypes, and running strict stitch quality checks. The parameters of that engineering are just staggering. But reading through this process, I kept wondering about the order of operations.
What do you mean?
Well, does the fabric dictate the design, or does the design dictate the fabric?
Yeah.
Like chicken or egg?
That is a brilliant question. And the reality is that it's a constant negotiation.
A negotiation.
Yeah. Let's look at a concrete example. Imagine a designer sketches a dress with massive, rigid, gravity-defying shoulders.
Okay, very avant-garde.
Right. If they hand that sketch to a pattern maker and say, make this out of raw silk, the pattern maker will tell them it's impossible.
Because silk is too soft.
Exactly. Raw silk is too fluid. Those massive shoulders will immediately collapse under their own weight like a parachute. So the designer has to either abandon the architectural sketch or they have to engineer a completely new, stiffened textile to force the design into reality.
Got it. So in that case, the sketch demands the material.
Yes. But I imagine it goes the other way too, right?
Yeah, I think so. Like you find a textile that moves so beautifully, you just build an entire collection to showcase its physical properties.
Exactly. You let the fabric speak for itself. But, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the choice of fabric isn't just an aesthetic or structural engineering decision anymore.
Well, right, because of the environmental impact.
Yes. The source highlights a massive sweeping industry shift towards sustainability. Eco-friendly materials and ethical sourcing are rapidly moving from being like a niche luxury to an absolute industry standard.
And the source points to Apparelizer again here as a prime example of a brand adopting these responsible, mindful clothing choices at scale. But I do have to ask, is high fashion sustainability actually moving the needle globally, or is it just like a marketing tool for brands to justify higher price tags?
That's a fair skepticism,
Okay.
but the source frames it as a necessary evolution rather than just marketing.
Okay, why is that?
Because fashion operates on such a massive global scale. The supply chain mathematics of using an ethically sourced organic cotton versus a heavily processed synthetic material that has profound real-world ecological impacts.
Oh, I see. Because of the sheer volume they produce.
Exactly. When a major brand standardizes eco-friendly materials, they are shifting millions of dollars in agricultural and manufacturing practices.
Wow.
So in that moment of choosing a fabric, the designer isn't just an artist or a structural engineer anymore. They are making a deeply impactful ethical declaration about how resources are extracted from the earth.
That is heavy. Okay, so the pattern makers and tailors have taken this carefully chosen, ethically sourced fabric. They've mapped the darts, they've cut the bias, and they've built the physical prototype.
The prototype is finally real.
Yeah. But now, that highly engineered garment faces its ultimate stress test. It actually has to survive contact with a living, breathing, moving human body.
Enter the fitting room.
The crucible.
Truly. This is arguably the most vital, intense moment in a designer's daily routine. The source describes how sample garments are put on live models to critically evaluate the fit, the comfort, fabric movement, and just the overall aesthetic appearance.
And it's not just a quick check in the mirror, right?
Oh, no. This isn't a passive viewing. It is a highly active surgical process. They are making real-time millimeter-by-millimeter adjustments.
Which completely ripping things
Yeah,
apart.
they might alter a waistline, change the drape of a collar, or, and this happens, if the garment's structural integrity is failing, they might completely scrap it and swap the fabric entirely.
And it's not just the clothes themselves being evaluated. It's the styling sessions that happen simultaneously.
Right, looking at the whole look.
Yeah, they are completing the collection's identity by pairing the garments with specific accessories, footwear, hairstyles, and makeup for photo shoots and runways. They're trying to perfectly balance elegance and practicality.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, as I was reading about these fitting sessions, so what does this all mean? I have to challenge the premise here. With all the exact measurements, the advanced 3D digital software we discussed, and the precise mathematical blueprints from the pattern makers, why is there still so much chaotic trial and error in the fitting room? Like, shouldn't the math just work?
You would absolutely think so. And it would if you were building a static object.
Right.
If you design a table in 3D software, the table isn't going to suddenly change its posture. But flesh and bone are inherently dynamic.
Did it move?
Exactly. A digital rendering or a rigid dress form doesn't breathe. It doesn't walk down a street, slouch in a chair, or reach across a table for a cup of coffee. Clothes must interact with human kinematics.
Kinematics, meaning like the actual mechanics of human motion.
Precisely. A garment has to move, stretch, and drape correctly while in motion. A shoulder seam that looks mathematically perfect on a stationary 3D rendering might pull the entire waist hem up to the ribs when a real person simply lifts their arm to hail a cab.
Oh, I hate when shirts do that.
Right. And this raises an important question. There is a much larger engineering challenge here that the industry faces, and that's standardization.
Meaning making it fit everyone.
Yeah. High design requires meticulous, customized tailoring to adapt to the unique geometry of one specific fit model. But a brand ultimately has to scale that exact architectural intent from a runway size 0 to a mass market size 12.
Without losing the garment's structural integrity. You know, that completely changes how I think about buying clothes. Because as consumers, we pull something off the rack, and if it bunches up or pulls weirdly across the shoulders, we immediately blame our own bodies like, oh, my shoulders are weird.
Which is so unfair to ourselves.
It is.
Yeah.
Because the reality is we are just experiencing a failure in mass market kinematics. The architectural blueprint wasn't scaled properly for dynamic movement.
That is exactly the takeaway. True fit requires an intimately physical, tactile process that feels beautifully traditional. I mean, you literally have artisans with pins in their mouth chalking fabric on a living, breathing model to map the tension of movement.
It's a real craft.
It is.
Yeah.
But we have to acknowledge the jarring reality of the environment they are working in today.
Right, the modern hustle.
Exactly. These